Hi, and welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Basson, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of a book, Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news or TV, social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. And here today, we are going to talk about relationships in the workplace, and especially employee engagement, with Lex McKee. Hi, Lex.
Hi, Sophie. Great to be on the show. Thank you very much.
No worries. So, for the benefit of everybody else, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yep. The most important thing for me, the significant moment in my personal history, twice in my very early years, two teachers really believed in me way more than I believed in myself. So I think when you're little, when you're young, your identity is being formed. I think that's self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
My personal opinion of myself was far below the opinion these two teachers had of me. And I can't even remember what they taught.
Which kind of going on a tangent a minute, it's quite interesting as a fact, considering as a child, normally, you kind of know no better.
No. So you're looking for some sort of authority. And these two amazing authority figures said, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. We like you. You're amazing. Mm-hmm. And eventually I gave up under the onslaught of their positivity and decided two things. Number one, I was okay. And number two, teaching was a vocation. And that changed everything for me. Not a job, a vocation. We all know teachers who turned us on. I hope we know teachers who turned us on to a subject by their enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. So maybe you weren't into history and you got this history teacher who just brought history to life and you went, wow, now I'm into history. My chemistry teacher, Mr. Hill, was about 10 foot tall. When we were first at secondary school, he wasn't 10 foot tall. He was nearly 7 foot tall, but he looked like 10 foot tall. He would go up a flight of stairs with one step. It was just like awesome. He had one eye left because he lost the other eye in a chemistry accident. His first lesson with us was to lob a lump of sodium into a galvanized bucket and take out half the ceiling. And we all went, we are in to chemistry. It's amazing.
But to be fair, considering our kids sometimes are not into this kind of subjects, I can see how that work.
Amazing. Whereas my physics master all wired us up to an electronic thing. I think it's called a Van de Graaff generator, and electrocuted the whole group in the first lesson on physics. So I've already decided at a young age, I do chemistry. I don't do physics. And that sowed that seed in me of seeking a workplace experience that was vocational rather than just a job, where you wake up on Monday morning and go, yes, I'm going to work. And my weekend was amazing, but I'm still excited about going to work.
And that is the thing. There's so many people, especially with social media now, where you see it, oh, Monday's back, weekend's over. And to be fair, I recall before social media, when I was working, sometimes, there was that Sunday night feeling of kind of going back to school, so to speak, where you didn't want to do it.
Yep, TFI Fridays, a whole brand built on the whole joy of Friday night. So you're going to have 2 days of your life doing what you really want to do to balance the 5 days of your life.
Well, you do what you don't like.
Because I'm going to do it.
Exactly. So in terms of we're talking vacation and stuff, but what, because let's not assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. What is employee engagement and why is it so important in your opinion?
Employee engagement to me is energy. So vocation literally means a calling to do something. It's a sense of purpose. Until you're doing a job that you feel fulfills your values, if you've already got clarity around your sense of purpose, I recognize that's a tough call. Not many people have that, but if you know what you're on the planet for in your own mind, let's not go spooky on it, but a lot of people have a kind of belief around, I'm here to leave the planet in a better place than when I arrived. That's a great sense of purpose. If they haven't got to that clarity yet, they'll have a lot of values around what is okay, what is not okay. And until you have a job where you go, this job matches my values, and ideally your goals, you're not going to be engaged. Engagement is all about energy, and there are certain professions that will give you energy. So Sophie, are you more a creative or an analyst?
Do you know, I can be a bit of both, actually.
Good. So you've got the flexibility.
Mm.
So if you're in a job where you had creative demand on your intellect, but also you had to analyze stuff and deliver results, you might go, do you know what? I'm really energized.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, in the jobs I've been in, I think the creative element was stifled quite a few times, which is possibly why I struggled, because I would create stuff to make life easier or whatever, and it would be not always, but, you know, some of the time completely poo-pooed, and then it just makes you think, oh, what's the point then?
That sounds like you've got that mechanic idea of going, and, you know, I can tinker with this, it can be better. And that's a great example of the coaching that we've indulged in just a little bit. You know, you've gone, well, if you had a new pattern of thinking here, you would feel more energized, more engaged, more
Now, one of my bugbears with employee engagement is that some company, for one of the better words, pretend to be doing it. They tick the box by introducing random stuff that's completely irrelevant in my book, and that actually employees look at and are like, what's that about?
Exactly. Employee engagement. Who is it defined by? The employee. I started out my training.
And how often is that the case? Not that often.
I started my career training people in customer service. And what we used to say in those early workshops is customer service is defined by the customer service manual. Here is, you're waiting for an Amazon delivery, I think, today. Amazon will define what customer obsession is, as they call it. Really interesting phrase. My argument was Amazon's an amazing company. However, my opinion of how obsessed Amazon are with me is defined by one person only, yours truly. We would talk about customer delight. Do you remember Bird's Angel Delight, the whippy stuff?
Yeah.
That was my image for customer delight. It's always defined by the customer. So you might be, for example, a vehicle detailer and cleaner. What do they call that when they clean?
Balloting, no?
Balloting, that's the word. Thank you very much. And you might be specialist in American cars here in UK. So you get somebody's car into the shop and you think, do you know what? We could do so much better to improve the customer's experience of this car. There's a couple of things we could do. Now, the customer's expecting the car to be delivered by 2 p.m., but because you've gone the extra mile, it's delivered by 4 p.m. If you then don't tell the customer what you're doing in advance, the customer goes, well, that was rubbish service. Yeah. Because you haven't communicated. So customer delight or customer obsession is always going to be defined by the customer, in the same way employee engagement is always defined by the employee.
I recall I was in a previous life when they're starting to, my first job, it was not, I'm not going to say it was non-existent, although they, you know, looking back on it, they were actually more forward than so many companies nowadays, which is quite an interesting point, really. But the job after that, they decided that the employees, you know, needed a bit more engagement. It was actually coming from the very top because we were owned by an American company. And yes, a lot of the employees were disgruntled. They were good to the local manager, shall we call it, because to them we were a team, but they were certainly not doing it for the company, which is never a good thing. Because if you're in with a manager, you've got a problem. Either way, so they created this employee engagement survey, and the results were 87%. And the reason, it was really high. And the reason why that was is because the questions and the way they were worded and what we were talking about was completely irrelevant.
Does your dog prefer the new dog food or broken glass?
Pretty much.
I wanted to share something with you today because as a coach, you'll appreciate this. Chris Wilkinson, HR expert, who you know as well, we both share that connection, amazing guy. And he was saying, coaching, you can have an impact one-to-one and a really, really valuable impact. If you coach a manager and they manage a team of 12, you're coaching 1 to 12. Providing they've got the skills, the attitude, and the abilities to pass that on. So it's interesting you say that the managers were more engaged. Seems like they didn't have the skill set then and the attitudes and the knowledge to pass on that engagement to their team.
I'm not necessarily sure it was so much that, to be completely honest with you. I think it was more a way of getting the employees on board, because sometimes some of the stuff that was ruled out, it was never going to work, and we all knew that. But you still had to sell the idea to the employee. So to get them on your side, you have to find ways, because it makes your life easier in the long term.
Yep. It's that engagement in the process, isn't it? So I talk about the X model of engagement from Blessing White, which is such a beautifully elegant model, where you talk about your meeting the company's desires as one of the axes, and the other axis is satisfaction for the employee. But the sweet spot is where you get discretionary effort. That to me is the two key words of employee engagement: discretionary effort. So there I am on a Sunday night, not at work, going, do you know what? I reckon if we did that for the customers, they'd be more engaged. Once you get to that point, you've got the sweet spot of maximum contribution to the organization and maximum satisfaction from being part of that tribe, part of that community, part of that brand.
And there's kind of a couple of things I want to say about that. For starters, I think that obviously the engagement starts at the recruitment level, because you've got to make sure the person you're recruiting is going to fit into the organisation, to their value, to the mission statement, blah, 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 with their colleagues, all that sort of stuff. And that's all well and good. But then the top changes, shall we say. And I recall in my particular case, so we were bought out by another company in one occasion. And if I look at someone close to me at the moment, her company has had a bit of a restructure where they've got a new MD. And all of a sudden, he's actually working against the core values we've been working towards in the last 10 years. He seems to have created new ones, which he hasn't actually shared with anybody. So everybody's on tenterhooks. She's not enjoying her job anymore. And in both cases, you then have people who are completely associated with the company, with their values, with their colleagues, and everything else. And because of a change out of the control by someone or a situation that being bought out, that balance is really at risk.
Wow. Do you know, I have never thought that through before. If the actual, the proposition from the company changes, that really does change everything. It's an ecosystem, isn't it? They talk about new broom, new management, new broom concept of sweeping their own. Wow.
I recall a chap who was part of my team in Maidstone. And when I took on that very local office, I was told that he'd had the same shift pattern for 20 years. He'd been there for 20 years and he didn't want promotion. He was happy as he was. And that's fair enough, because he was just happy in his own skin with his family, blah, blah, blah. When we were bought, I went, but I found out later on, because I've got him as a friend on Facebook, that he left too within a year. And I think that really highlighted that someone who'd been there for 20 years, had absolutely no intention of ever moving on, to leave highlights how much they had changed the proposition, as you say.
I'm sure you've heard the cliche, people don't leave a job, they leave a manager. When the manager changes.
In that case, a company, generally, more than the job.
The management.
Yes. And I think the second thing to remember as well is that managers are also employees.
Yes.
Which people, I think, forget sometimes.
They change. I had a friend once said, "You're like a sullen tiger," which I thought was really cool. Is this my new kung fu name? Sullen tiger. So I go, "What's that then, Bridget?" And she said, "Well, I'm never quite sure if you're going to purr around me and rub yourself against my legs or claw me one."
Which is a fault and a half as well, but that's a different story.
It's just like, what? I was so offended. And then I had that wonderful aha moment going, do you know what? She's bang on the money. Because that was in the Johari window of seen by others, but not seen by me. And suddenly I go, yeah, I'm a bit of a sullen tiger. And that has changed the way I work with my team members, my crew members. So as soon as that little tiger starts coming up going, grrr, I get Bridget in my head going, you're a sullen tiger. Settles down a bit.
So how do you go about creating long-lasting employee engagement?
Listen. I always delight when I meet other coaches and sales professionals just to smile to myself in my silent tiger way and watch what the ratio of yap, 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 yap is to listen. I think that's step one. Listen to your employees. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to demonstrate that you've listened. And then I'm a big fan of Edward de Bono, and he talked about a thing called PO, which was provocative operation. And his idea was that any idea could be a PO idea. For example, he would say to a group of engineers, all cars have square wheels. And you'd hear this cuckoo off in the distance. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Well, I mean, what would happen if a car had square wheels? What kind of ride would you have? He framed the language to give the engineers, which were his customers in that situation, his employees, the opportunity to engage beyond the idea, like a stepping stone. And one of them, in that quiet moment, said, oh, actually, if I knew the size of the wheel and the rate it was moving, I could design a suspension system that would give you a smooth ride. And that's where Citroën developed active suspension from that bonkers idea. I'm not saying that your employees are always going to have bonkers ideas, but I'm saying that every single nugget that an employee gives you has value, first in their eyes, and then potentially to the brand and the company. If you go, right, where does that take us?
And I think this is two things here. First of all, the number two things that people say when they're not happy in a company is, I'm only a number. And the second thing is, no one listens to me. And the second thing I want to say is that there are so many people, because first of all, not everybody wants to go to the top, right? And whilst you should certainly develop everybody's qualities and, offer them promotion if it's available, first of all, but also good for them and they want it, fair enough. Some people actually just want to get on with a job that they're employed to do and that they enjoy. That's why they applied for the job in the first place. But where so many people are short-sighted is that actually it's the people on the ground that know the job. They know how to tweak it very often for not that much money because they do it day in, day out, and they can see what needs to happen. And yes, sometimes it's some mental ideas that are never going to work, but sometimes there's some good ones. And I think the issue is that so many people feel that they can't share that they're going to be ridiculed, that they're going to be told that it's stupid, that it's rubbish, that it's not going to happen. And I feel that, with the mad ones, put a pinch of salt on it, but they're all valuable to them.
Yes. It's beauty in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? I am not going to share with you an idea unless I've done a pilgrimage in my own mind from the idea to the development of the idea, to the boldness, to the risk of rejection that comes with me sharing that idea. So I would add to the need to listen to our employees, our team, our crew members, the need to understand what reward looks like in their motivational profile. We do something called motivational mapping, which talks about 12 different fuels for somebody's motivation. I'm almost at the extreme of introversion. If you did Myers-Briggs, most people are familiar with Myers-Briggs: introvert, extrovert, thinker, feeler, sensing, intuiting, etc., judging and perceiving. When it comes to where your energy comes from, introversion or extroversion, you're further up the scale than me when it comes to extroversion. So you would go a bit stir crazy if you were on your own for too long. Is that fair? Have I read you?
That's actually an interesting point because I was definitely an introvert as a child. I became an extrovert because of said job back in the day. And I'm definitely turning back to an introvert without a shadow of a doubt. So I do have both.
TBM was amazing today. We had a room full of very noisy, very enthusiastic, powerful
people. And this is when I become an introvert. I'm not fighting for the attention.
I had to go and lie down afterwards. After we've done this interview, I'm going to go and lie down in the darkened room. Not because I haven't enjoyed it, but I just need to recharge by that motivational fuel. Classic example, the other day, Steve Jones, who taught me in motivational mapping, talked about one of his clients who had done so well in her job that they promoted her to team leader and gave her her own office with doors that closed and quiet, and her performance and happiness dropped. I can see from, if you're listening to this, I can see on camera now that Sophie's going, yep, I've got that one. I know exactly what happened. What happened, Sophie?
Well, it wasn't what she wanted. She needed the people around her, and all of a sudden it just didn't work for her because she didn't feel part of a team, I expect.
Promoted to isolation. So stick me in an open plan office and you will watch me wilt. Stick an extrovert in an open plan office and you'll watch them thrive.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
See, talking of this, there's it's kind of sideways, but I feel it's important in terms of employee engagement. Someone I know works for a company. Now, it's a very specialised thing that they do. There's only two, I believe, in the country, one in the south and one in the north. So it's not something like you can say, I'm just going to go look for another job. If you've decided to do that kind of job, you're kind of stuck south or north.
Yep, gotcha.
Anyway, what they did to make sure that no one, they keeps on their toes and to supposedly help with a creative blah, blah, blah juices, every 6 months they change them desk. Not just desk, sometimes building floor area. And actually, it is really bad because people really struggle with that. Just as soon as they get settled and there's a routine, they're moved again. And actually, I personally think it goes really against the creative juices. And I personally think from the way he speaks and blah, 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 that a lot of them actually are underperforming as a result.
That's a fascinating thing because I have a church background and I know that the Methodist group of ministers have a habit of moving the ministers on every 2 or 4 years. I know what it is, a bit like the Parliament thing. And exactly the same thing. For some, it's great, fresh impetus, momentum there, and others go, no, I've taken 2 years to build a relationship with the team. The church is as much a team as any other sort of institution. I thought, wow, you've got an insight there, haven't you?
Because I think that, what we forget sometimes about employee engagement, it's not just about the contribution and increasing the productivity and the performance of the company or the employee, it's also the levels of satisfaction. And satisfaction is far more than money. Yes, pay rises do help. But if I go back to that job, that company was actually bought out some time back. But when I joined them, I think it was 2001, 2002. And back then, there was no such things really as proper rewards or whatever. It was a security firm, and they would give 2 dry cleaning vouchers a month as a perk. But I think that, for those who had blazers and stuff, it was an amazing perk. They had this book that was called the Red Book, where everybody could put their ideas in. Every month, someone would win a voucher across the south or the north. And the yearly voucher was worth 250 quid back in the day, And there were things like proper awards where you didn't nominate yourself. People were nominating you. It was a surprise when it happened. With, again, big vouchers, 250, 500 pounds. They had long service awards where they would give you we're talking, again, back for the day, some proper rewards, and they gave you a Christmas present every single Christmas, which wasn't just a bottle of wine or whatever. It was well thought out. It was a thermal mug. It was a penknife. It wouldn't give that out now, but things that were relevant to the job. And I personally found that was quite forward when I look back to it now.
It's that thoughtfulness, isn't it? As you calibrate to your team, your crew, your employees, and go, I wonder what would be valued in their sight. It's like any relationship, how do you know that you're loved? For me, there is an element of a lack of criticism. So therefore, I can project that into other relationships. I'm going to show my employees, my crew, my team that I appreciate them by not criticizing them. Now, if that's not their complex equivalence, as they call it, this love means do not criticize. I do not criticize your driving, therefore you love me. It's bizarre, isn't it? When you actually sit back and think about it, you go, how could that mean that? But that's what runs people's mental software. How do you know you're the expert on relationships?
Well, no, I was going to say, there's five different languages of love, and without going through them all, but it's words, it's physical touch. Obviously, physical touch in an office environment is not really, do you know what I mean? Not what people are looking for. And then you've got acts of service, blah, blah, blah. So I think if you translate these other languages, you can kind of put some in place where people will think that they're doing a good job and they're achieving. And I think the other thing as well, it's about their own confidence and self-worth and personal growth within that work environment. Again, I felt that I'd reached a point where I was a bit stifled and I wasn't going to move up, because they felt that I was running my area really well, therefore they didn't want it to go down. Instead of thinking, well, actually, if we promoted her to regional manager, she could apply that to the entire region as opposed to just like 3 or 4 offices. So there was things like that where, just I left, in essence.
Yeah. I'd love to share with you motivational mapping, actually find out what your motivational profile is. A classic example, if we just take the
I reckon that's changed in the last 10 years, though.
Yes, it changes every 90 days, potentially.
Oh, fair enough.
And what we can do is we can punish people by rewards. If they've got the wrong motivational profile for the reward that you think they want, then you are going to be really shocked. So this lady, gets her own office, the corner office with the silence, was a punishment, not a reward, because her fuel was that personal interaction.
Yeah. And I think the other thing as well, employee engagement is about inspiring people to want more and to believe, a bit like that teacher with you, to believe that they can do more. Now, the person I was mentioning earlier where the MD has changed, she wasn't going to apply for any promotions whatsoever, but she got inspired to do better, and that's what led to her having a promotion. And I think that sometimes we forget that we can and we should inspire people to believe in themselves, basically. And that's not just in the workplace, that's anywhere.
That's a great example of motivational fuel, isn't it? Think about the literal meaning of the word inspire.
Yeah.
Breathe in. And when a manager comes in who inspires you, they're like a literal breath of fresh air. You go, I get so energized. And then you've got, I'm sure in your life, and we won't have any names here on the podcast, but there will be a few mood hoovers or energy vampires, as I like to call them. Mm-hmm. And they call up and they go, hi, it's only me. And you can feel your energy being sucked out. Whereas other people go, hi, I've got some really bad news for you. It's going to be terrible. And you go, that was a great conversation, because I've got the energy that mirrors places where you need to be.
And I think this is about rapport, and you need to be in rapport with your staff or with anybody you talk to.
We need to live in harmony with one another, in empathy and sympathy.
And I think that so if you've got good employee engagement and all of a sudden they get it, they get why, certain things happen instead of moaning about it, then you're halfway there. Because one story I particularly recall, we used to have an awful lot of damage to vehicles because I used to run a fleet of cars. And we were just really bad with it. I don't know why, but there was an element of bad luck, because sometimes there is, but there was also an element of something else I never put my finger on. But either way, explaining to them that if there was no car damage, they would get a carrot. And when they didn't get the carrot, they actually understood, so no one moaned about it. And it's not about manipulating their perception, but it's about making them understand what to expect, isn't it?
Also understanding meta programs. Now I know I'm using NLP language there, and if you're
explain to people
NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So there are patterns we run through our neurology, through our brains, which produce results. And one of the biggest clashes you can have in a personal relationship or in a business relationship is one person runs a program that sorts their information for difference, and another one will sort their information for similarity. So I'm a very, very positive, I've learned to be positive person, in spite of the sullen tiger stuff I said earlier. I'm always looking for the win. I'm looking for the positive. I'm looking for the connection. I'm looking for the like match. You want crystal clear communication by employees, team members, crew members who are giving discretionary effort. And you can get that culture moving in an organization. You'll have a brand story worth broadcasting to the universe. Here endeth the lesson.
So we're kind of getting towards the end of our time together. So what would be your parting words with relation to employee engagement?
I'm going to be ruthless. I don't usually sell stuff, but I am going to sell an idea. Have a look at 2 things on YouTube. Number 1, the X model of employee engagement, Blessing White. I've got no stake in that whatsoever, but it talks about maximum contribution and maximum satisfaction being the sweet spot. but it also talks about the very, very dangerous positions away from that. For example, if you're giving maximum contribution to an organization, but getting minimum satisfaction as you moved into in that organization, the most dangerous thing is what we call the crash and burner. And a crash and burner is someone who's giving maximum contribution to the organization and getting no longer satisfaction from the organization. So they've been a consistent player all the way through. And something has changed, like the manager or the value, and they're going, I'm not satisfied by this anymore. So there's 3 routes for them. They can come back to be fully engaged, get the satisfaction, which is what we want, or they can quit at great cost to the organization and leave. And the worst case scenario is that they quit and stay.
You see, the thing with this quickly is that it's got to be recognised and picked up by an outside person, isn't it? That they kind of switched off.
And there's usually a sign, because they're not giving the ideas at meetings anymore. They're not putting forward stuff without being asked. This discretionary effort is the key phrase. The Blessing White X model of employee engagement, very easy to find on YouTube. Just go for the X model of employee engagement. Then the other thing is motivational mapping talks about 12. Is that right? 9. Let's get it right. 9 different types of fuel. For example, you might have the defender profile, where job security is essential for you, compared with someone else in the team who's got the creative profile. And for them, they have to have recognition of their creative ideas. Now, they're high risk takers. The defender is not a high risk taker. So you can imagine giving the same reward to somebody with a creative fuel and with the defensive fuel, they're poles apart. It's your north.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Lex, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks again. And for everybody else, if you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, but more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.